Hello and welcome back to Magic in the Noise. Today we have an exciting live stream for you. We're going to be looking at group results for remote viewing the Chicago World Fair of 1893. So before I jump in, here are our group participants, our remote viewers that submitted sessions this month. We have Evan, Cody, Michael, John, and Claudia. And they're from a little bit all over the world. And they did really great work. So that was really exciting to see. If you in the audience would like to participate as a remote viewer, we put these targets out monthly on Patreon, Facebook, sometimes on Twitter. And I invite the top submitters to join us live to discuss their hits and their ideas about their data. And that's what we're going to do today. And so before we look at the slides, we look at the data, let's get a general impression of what people thought about their data. Who wants to start?
Yeah, I didn't think I did too well on this one. Kind of rushed it out.
Sometimes those are the better sessions. I was telling Evan before we started. Often the best sessions are when I'm really just wanting to go to sleep, but I have a deadline. And so I'm forcing myself. I'm stressed. I have to get it done before I get to go to sleep. And I just get through the pages. And it's in that kind of high stress state that sometimes the better data comes through. So you did well for just running it out. What about you, Michael?
Yeah, my own experience of this session, it was over quite a few days, and I feel quite happy. I never really developed full closure on it. Like, I always felt like there's always something more I could tease out of it. I wasn't quite sure what to make sense of, and I think in that state of like beginner's mind and like genuine curiosity, that's when I find I get like some of the best unfiltered data comes through with me. So
Nice.
yeah, I kind of feel like I got a lot of value out of this for exploring.
You had really broad data, and sometimes, so with these live streams, I'm experimenting, I'm trying different things, and I try to do different types of targets and different skill levels of targets. And sometimes my taskings are very narrow, and sometimes they're very broad. They're usually not too broad. I kind of prefer to give remote viewers a narrow tasking so that it kind of helps them find the target and makes the data a little bit more in depth in one avenue. But for this one, I left it a little bit broader. Describe the World Fair of Chicago in 1893. Tell me about the builders. Tell me what happened to them, because they built these amazing structures. And then there was this huge fire. And then the ones that they rebuilt were nowhere near the exquisite opulence of the World Fair buildings. And so it was a really broad tasking. So it allowed remote viewers to kind of go and follow their own interests and their own curiosity. And so it was kind of nice to see where everybody went with that. What did you think, John?
I thought it was really interesting. I actually had this or something similar related to the fair as a target about a year ago. So I had to go back and find my data to kind of compare and see kind of what I got there. And I kind of hit on a bunch of different aspects this time compared to the last time. Like you said, it's a very cool target, but it is pretty broad. So I kind of had to, I think I still have some digging to go and reading up on just all the stuff that kind of went on related to the fair. But no, overall, it was really interesting. I was really excited to see everyone else's data more than looking at my own, to be honest. But yeah, super interesting.
Fantastic. What about you, Claudia?
Yeah, same here. I find the subject so interesting. I already read a lot about it years before. But now I found it a pity that I did not pick up on any of the buildings, because these are so nice. I just picked up on more on the subtasks. So I'm very, I love the subject and the target. But I'm very curious to see the slides and how we all, have the same things.
It is interesting. I've had that experience on a couple of targets where when I get the reveal, I'm like, oh, I would have liked to have gone digging into that instead of this, right? Like you said, like maybe you would have wanted to see the buildings instead of seeing some of the, And I think that's kind of the value sometimes of doing remote viewing projects where you don't just do the target session and then get your reveal 2 weeks or a week later, depending on how Sash is doing. when you do a longer project where you do a session, you don't get target feedback, you do a second one, and then maybe a month later, 3 weeks later, you do another session against that target or a retask or a different tasking against the same project. Those can be really interesting. Some groups do mid-loading, but it's not necessary. So David and I have done projects where we're just you stay blind throughout the whole thing. There's no reason to unblind your viewer in any way. Even categorical is unnecessary. And so those can be fun, but it takes the ability to not get feedback, which is hard. I submitted a session to a tasker just this week, and John, I empathize with this, but this more like I keep checking my emails. Like, did he send me target feedback yet? Because I'm really curious. So yeah, it's funny.
Yeah. Hmm.
Being a tasker is different than being the viewer. And Evan, what
Yeah,
about
for
you?
sure.
For the audience, Evan is joining us. He's new. He submitted his session. He did really well on it. He got good data, and he's an HRVG viewer. So welcome, Evan. We're glad to have you here. And tell us a little bit about what your experience of the target was.
Thank you. Yeah, it was interesting. This is the first target I've worked with a different group, so tasking coming in from someone else. It was very interesting to notice the different tenor. This was the data came in very strong. It was very almost aggressive, very different from the other team I work with.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad to hear it. I'll take that as a compliment.
No, definitely, it was a strong signal. I was very happy to get it.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, different taskers have different flavors. And so it is good, especially if you're learning remote viewing, to try out different taskers and then find the ones that you maybe resonate better with, and then you can work well with them. But even if you do have a tasker you work well with, it's always good to keep your skills sharp by doing work for other taskers that you know. One of the things I always say is make sure you know your tasker, make sure they're giving you safe targets, make sure that they're setting them up properly, that they aren't embedding other things. So having said that, when you're not speaking, if you can mute yourself just so that we don't hear the planes in your environment. And then I will start the slideshow. And so for the audience, I'm going to be showing the slides, and I can't see the remote viewers on screen when I'm sharing the slides. So remote viewers are going to have to interrupt me, jump in, and just start talking, telling me about your data, because we're going to do things a little bit differently this month. I'm going to have the remote viewers do a little bit of their own analysis. I gave them the feedback a little bit earlier than I sometimes do, and they've done a little bit of research. It's a shame that Jeff can't be here. Jeff had amazing research and has a really amazing data, and some of it I have in my slides, some of it I had to cut just for time. But we'll cover the data that we can. Let's see. Can I find my screen? That's not the right one. There we go. We'll go with that one for now. And so here's what the target was. The 1893 World's Fair held in Chicago in the summer of 1893. Obviously, the task was please describe the World Fair buildings and how they were designed and built. I also asked the remote viewers to describe the original people who designed and built these buildings, and where did they come from, I wanted to know. And then some of the retasks were about specific data in their first session, and then the more generalized retasking was, I cannot, it's behind a label, so I can't see it, but please describe where the group, that could design this went and why their knowledge seems to have been largely lost. And I think I lost the share, did I? Yes, I did. Let me just try that again. Sorry about that. Always little technical difficulties. One of the problems is that as the presenter, I see a slightly different screen. And so it makes it a little bit more complicated. But this should work now. There we go. Perfect. Okay, moving on. This is what Chicago looked like in 1893. So the skyscrapers, the architecture was breathtaking. It was beautiful. It was complex, and it was very different from what we see today, what we build today. It was a lot more. I don't know. There was a lot more involved, I think, in building these buildings. And here's what the Chicago World's Fair buildings looked like. They're mostly white, gypsum and plaster, a lot of fountains, and just beautiful architecture, a lot of domes, and a lot of sculptures of animals all around. And so we're going to see that in the remote viewing data. So the World Fair was a major event. It was celebrating the 400th anniversary of Christopher Columbus's arrival in the Americas. That was part of it. And we'll see that in some of the structures and sculptures that are involved in the fair, and that the remote viewers picked up data about. So the fair introduced a lot of innovations, a lot of new technologies, new designs, new things, new objects, new ways of doing things, new foods. There were cultural and ethnic displays and demonstrations, and it was a huge event. And this attracted over, according to Wikipedia, 27 million visitors in 1893. So that's a little bit wild. So the main buildings, as we can see here, they were designed in a neoclassical style. They were collectively known as the White City because of their white facades. And there was the use of electric lighting. So this was new. It was this huge innovation. There were big wars about Edison's current, direct current, and Tesla's alternating current. And Westinghouse came in, and they lit the whole fair. And we're going to see that some of the remote viewers picked up on that, and it was really, really impressive to see. And also the fairgrounds covered 686 acres. And so there's a lot of mysteries surrounding how they built something so enormous in such a short amount of time. And then it burnt down after the fair. So after the summer, there were supposed to be temporary buildings, and so then most of them burnt down. But of the structures that survived the fire, they're still standing. And so there are a lot of mysteries surrounding all of this. So let's get into the data. So Evan, let's start with you. You seem to really have seen the structures, the buildings. Do you want to tell us a little bit about this?
It was confusing. Yeah, I was getting a lot of architecture gestalts, especially those arches that you see there. But it was a jumble. It was real, more like something artificial.
More like something artificial, in the sense of?
I didn't know. It seemed like something that was not permanent.
Right. Okay. Interesting. So that was a really nice picking up on good data there. And I just thought it was interesting. You had the bridge, you had the arches, just the general gestalt.
Yeah, I didn't see anything like really like a single structure. It was just sort of a mismatch of different architectural elements.
And again, that's probably because of the broadness of the tasking and of the target itself. And then Jeff as well saw the buildings, large stone buildings looking a little bit like the Notre Dame Cathedral. I think that that's a very good description of these structures. So that was really well done. I have a little bit of data here from Wikipedia, but if people are interested, they can kind of do their own research. And I think it's worth it because it's a really interesting event. So Michael, tell us a little bit about what you saw here. One of the things I do want to point out is that Patrick, who isn't able to join us today, but he did submit a great session, he also saw the skeleton data that you saw, and he drew that skeletal kind of, and I think a lot of these, especially the domes, they're built in the structure where they have the kind of metal skeletons, and then the plaster and gypsum is kind of attached. So talk to us a little bit about that. Oh, did I just lose it again? I did. Sorry. Michael, I'll let you talk a little bit about it while I put it back in.
Yeah, no worries. Like, comment, subscribe. Work from our sponsors. This is brought to you by the data stream. And yeah, with respect to the skeletal information, for me, that came out the element of greatest interest to me. And then, yeah, I did get these very round domes, this sense of like white paste almost coming from like a sort of rolled up toothpaste tube. So that made me think of like perhaps like the plaster elements. Then I got these sort of this car chases, like these like skeletons there. So I didn't think I was like tapping into like the materials itself that were used during the construction of this city that was going on there. So for me, that came up quite strongly in terms of like my contact with like the physical structures there, as well as lots of like curved frames and things like that as well.
I thought what was interesting here was that you did have like that sense of the water and then the structures beside it. And so really good visual target contact, I think. And then the data point of the function of aesthetics and design. So you're picking up on the tasking question because I was asking you, tell me about who built it and how they built it and designed it and what happened to those people. So I thought that was really good. And then here again, you're picking up on the water. And I thought the white containers in a grid, I thought that was really good data because it is such a dense complex. And so really, really good work here on this. Here's your toothpaste from a tube. And again, that I thought was such good data because it is plaster and gypsum. It's not necessarily a standard building material that we would use for permanent
Yeah,
structure.
you're not presenting right now. Sorry.
Oh, I'm so sorry, everyone. I'm struggling today. Yeah, so
there we
here's
go.
here's the water and the structures beside it, and here's the white containers in a grid, and what that looks like. So this image is a tinted old photograph, but it shows you the complexity of the design. And then you had a space of nature enclosed and appropriated for training or overcoming challenges. I think that that's a good description, actually, of the event because they were bringing all their new inventions and their new creations. And so that was really, really nice data. Here you had, I think these are the domes, right? Inside white dome tents. So that idea of like temporary structures. I thought that was really good. Yeah, really nice data there. And then Evan, here you picked up on, I think, some of the entertainment aspects of the fair. So you have cake, you had a lot of music, these kinds of things, and the king with the crown. I think these structures are what I would associate with palaces in Europe. So do you want to tell us a little bit about how that data came through for you?
Sure, yeah, I definitely, when I was looking at the architecture, I got the sense of a castle in the distance, or what looked like a castle to me. That previous photo reminds me of the circular structures. I kept seeing the sort of like a couple photos back maybe of these, yeah, those types of structures on the water is reminiscent of what I was kind of coming through.
Nice. That's
Um,
what you're experiencing.
a lot of information about animals, just different types of animals. I think you mentioned that was an element of the fair.
Yes. And we're going to see that, I think, in one of the next slides. So for the audience, this is the main picture that most people associate with the fair. So you have the Statue of Columbia, and then you have this main structure, and there's the water. And if you can see the boats, it gives you a sense of the size. You can barely make out the humans here. The humans are so small compared to the absolute size of these structures. So that's just something to note. And then Claudia, you did a map where you had a lighthouse. There are two different data points, I think, that work with this. So the Columbia, this big bronze statue at one end holding up the sphere with the bird on it and the torch. But there was also big spotlights because they were highlighting the invention or the rediscovery of electricity. And so they had these three huge spotlights that they were running at night. So do you want to tell us a little bit about your map?
Yeah, well, I drew it, and I strongly felt it was something near the no ocean, waterside, and I indeed saw shining radiation of a pole, and when it was ready, I knew that the north and the east was different, so I put east and north, and then when we had the target reveal, I checked it indeed, and then I thought, but if I look through the paper, it's mirrored, and then it looks more like the location it was on, because I checked it where it was in Chicago, so it was rather, yeah. actual. Yeah.
Very good job. I thought that was really good data.
Yeah.
And
Thanks.
David, you've joined us. Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
So David, this is
Hello.
Evan. David is co-founder of Magic and the Noise with me. And even though the live streams are kind of my little project for Mint, I do, talk to him about your data. I share the data with him. Sometimes I get all excited and I tell him, oh, look at what this person got. And it's really fun for me to be able to share that with him. And it's fun, I think, for David, right, to be able to see what people are doing.
Yeah, of course. I love to see how the viewers develop and how they are working against the target, both individually and as a group. So yeah, it's really exciting to see every week, or well, every month, sorry.
Nice. Yeah. Thank you for joining us, David. And it's my fault that David joined us after we started because yesterday I thought that we started at 3 p.m. CST, but no, we started at 3 p.m. CDT. And so trying to manage all the different time zones because we have people from all over the world here today, it does make it a bit challenging. And some time zones change times for summer and winter, but some don't. So that's always an added little complexity there. So I apologize to David for giving him the wrong starting time.
Yeah, no worries.
So, okay, let's go back to the data. So here, Cody, I actually think you did it. You mentioned in the beginning that you kind of did this a little bit quickly to get it out by the deadline. I actually think that this is a really good as the protector. And this is Columbia looking over the fair and protecting it. And I think it was actually good target contact. And then you had the kind of hollow inverted dome and it mirrors kind of Claudia's. For Claudia, it came through as maybe aluminum. So that idea of like metal, maybe temporary structures. Did you want to say something, Cody, about the protector that you saw?
Yeah, that was probably my second or third page. At that point, it felt like I was inside a really small enclosed space. I think I had the AOL of Genie lamp or something like that. But yeah, I didn't really think about it at that point in the session.
Yeah, that makes sense. And then, Michael, I think you did a fantastic job of describing the statue and the people behind it that are also grabbing for it. I see it in the second statue behind with the number of people and horses and bearing flags. So do you want to talk to us about this data? Because I think it was really fantastic target contact.
Yeah. Yeah, so this came to me as almost, like an image of statues, almost like the ones you'd see in like Rome or somewhere like that. It was like tons of statues everywhere on the streets, and the predominance was like this, one person with this torch, this light, and other people were kind of below it, kind of from behind, kind of grasping for it, and so on. And so to me, it felt like there was like a very kind of strong metaphors with that. It's like incredible, like momentous achievements, maybe a bit of covetousness as well too. So some of the data I picked up here was like kind of a lot of very grandiose, aspirational kind of stuff. Didn't have as much as a spiritual dimension to it as I've experienced in other kind of targets as well. So kind of maybe I think it was maybe more like a giant official kind of thing. And I feel like this is a great big match with that.
I think so. You have the torch bearer, which is a main element of the symbolism that's associated with the Chicago Fair. And you have the bird in flight, taking flight, the eagle taking flight, which is part of it. And so we're going to see that in a moment in other people's data as well. So here, John, you also...
Just a second.
Oh, yeah.
Back up. Probably not relevant. It's just my mind is whatever, crazy. But the one of the things I find interesting here is I see all the stuff that you guys have talked about. It's pretty clear. It's really awesome. Great hit, Michael. This is definitely associated, in my opinion, with this particular aspect. But what I find to be somewhat interesting is that the way that you've composed, again, your mind, like maybe you're seeing different levels, you just smash them together, that's fine. But Another level to this, a third level that I see potentially, is the two people's arms make the arch. There's the arch below in the background. And then the people, who are all colored the same, which is interesting, look like the columns, meaning if you look at the space, the space in between all the stuff, it's almost like you're abstracting another level of information within. It's like you're stacking 2 or 3 levels of information together is what I'm trying to say. But that's just me, and whatever. I'm just
Yeah.
mentioning it.
No,
was-
I saw that too. I agree, David. I also thought that the arms kind of are mirroring the pillars. It's mirroring the repetitive nature of the structure behind it, and the archway as well. So I think you're seeing something that's actually there in the data. What do you think, Michael?
Yeah, the just like looking at the picture again, I do notice now there's definitely a negative space aspect between like the 3 individuals who are shaded to be more indicated more in the background. There's like these white kind of columns between them there, you know?
Yes.
Yeah, and look at the arms of the 2 people in the foreground. They're kind of curving like the arch.
Yeah.
That's the thing that's interesting to me. But
Yes.
Huh.
Yeah. Definitely. Really, really good data there. And so John, you have the beautiful flow, the spiritual kind of aspect of Columbia, the Statue of the Republic, which is this big bronze statue here, was often referred to as Columbia. You had the idea of celebrating, cheering progress. That's exactly what the World's Columbian Exposition, which is the other name for the World's Fair, that's exactly what it was. And you had the bird more as like a pterodactyl kind of bird, but I think that the data was coming through, and you had that it was in bronze. I thought that was really surprising. So, do you want to tell us a little bit about how that came through in terms of the experience of the data?
Yeah, the beautiful sketch I have, which is anything beautiful, I have to label it as beautiful because it's not beautiful when I draw it. So that's what you see. The sketch doesn't really represent what I saw, but it kind of reminded me a little bit of the last target we did. So I thought maybe I was still connecting to the lady from the last one, but it was different. And I for some reason I described flowy, which kind of makes sense now that I looked at once I knew the reveal. But I didn't know what to make of it because it felt spiritual, but I think I was kind of reminded of the past target in the pterodactyl. I had a couple other hits, I think, on something that looked kind of prehistoric, so I didn't know what to make of that. My data was kind of all over the place, but it always seems to be like that. But yeah, it's really, really interesting stuff.
Yeah, I think so too. And what's interesting, well, we'll see it, I guess, in a couple more slides. But the pterodactyl, I think the bird is coming through. It's natalis. It's old. The spiritual aspect. Columbia was a goddess, right? It's a Greek myth, and so I think it was on target. And then Evan, you did a great job as well. You also picked up on the birds. It's an eagle. You saw a hawk with talons, so great data there. And you also, on the same page, you also had the orange orb. So this big bronze orb that Columbia is holding. So how is that? Are you happy, proud of the the target contact there?
Yeah, they were coming in separately, but the same page. So I wasn't sure what was going on, why they were coming in as separate images. I had that, not just that bird. I had a couple of rooster images come through. I wasn't sure why I kept getting that. And the king, the king image I got, I was obsessed with his mantle and his robes for some reason, but now I see why.
Yes.
They're all
Yeah,
kind of coming together.
definitely. Yeah.
those are great hits, Evan, and also John in the previous slide. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. Very, very nice. And then, John, you mentioned in your Esper Cascades the Daedalus. And when I looked into Daedalus, he, in Greek mythology, so this is related, this is relevant because we're talking about Columbia. He was a skilled architect and craftsman. And that's what this fair is all about: craftsmanship, new crafts. And the tasking was to tell me about the architect. He's seen as a symbol of wisdom, knowledge, and power. And interestingly, he's the father of Icarus. And so Icarus, who flies too close to the sun because he is defying tradition. And that's what this fair was doing. It was defying the peasant way of life and saying, look, we can have electricity. We can do all these amazing things. We're going to see a fax machine later on in the slides. And so I thought there was a lot of depth, I think, to that data point. Even though it was just in passing that you wrote that down, that's how a lot of the really good data comes through sometimes. It just gets sprinkled in. And then John, your cowboy hat, right? So you had the king with the robes, with the crown, but you have this man here in relation to the bronze statue. And I thought it was funny because when I looked into it, I found that there's a Phrygian cap that the statue is carrying on the staff, and the Phrygian caps didn't originally signify liberty, but they came to mean liberty, especially for the American Revolution, the French Revolution. And so I thought that was maybe a little bit of a nod to that idea that there's some kind of headgear that's important somehow. So I thought that was fun data. And then Patrick submitted his session. He's not here today, but we're still looking at his data. And he had a really nice kind of overview, this idea of history like reporting for future generations. I think that that's a nice definition of what this fair was. He had this idea of a whiteboard. So again, the white structures, people are picking up on that aspect, the white city. He picked up on this idea of like a museum feel and archiving, not for the public though. So this idea of like there's something secret that's held for kind of a clandestine group starts to come up in his data. And we'll see that later on in other people's data as well. But I thought it was a really nice overview. And so here, back to your data, John. Again, you have the veil, the reminder of a bride at the wedding. So that idea of a ceremony, a function, celebration, really, really good data. Yeah. And then here, so I retasked you when you first submitted this data about some arguing about what to do about some big light or energetic thing in the center, and you brought back flames and horns. And it's interesting to me because the fair did burn down afterwards. So did you want to say something about the horns and the flames? Because we're going to see, I think, yeah, here in Jeff's data, that the story is that the Great Chicago Fire was started by a cow kicking over a lantern. And there are a lot of people that challenge that story. But did you want to tell us a little bit about your data there?
Yeah, so the flames and the horns, that came up in my advanced perceptions part where I'm just meditating before I actually start the session. So sometimes those are applicable, sometimes they're not, but it seems like they were because obviously the fire was a big deal. But yeah, I wasn't sure about the horns. And then the part you retasked me on about, I had this perception of just all these kind of people around just chattering about what to do about this thing, and whatever this thing was came up a bunch in my session. I thought it was like an energy source or a something along those lines, but it could have been the fire. I'm still not 100% sure in my mind, but yeah, it was something like that, or maybe I was picking up on both because I said it had other data, but I didn't know what to make of it. I never do. So it's kind of, when you ask me what I think of it, it's like, yeah, it's a good question. I don't know what I think of it, but it's got to be, I think it means something.
I think so too. And I think, in the context of all the data, I did see that it seems that maybe the fire was set intentionally. And so we'll see. Yeah.
So do they have the origin location for the fire?
So no, there's a story that they kind of give to the public that there was a cow and it kicked over a lantern and the lantern fell into some straw and the straw started burning and the fire just stepped through.
Just because the last slide, maybe I missed what you were saying, but I don't think so. The middle one there with all the life forms makes me think of the statues. Is that what you saw also? And the center piece above it, which could be the fire's origin, might be that center building. That's why I wondered if that's where it started.
I'm not sure. I didn't find data on where exactly it started, but that would be really interesting. That would be good data if it was, yeah. And it kind of does look like that, doesn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
From Jeff. So when Jeff is talking about the cow and throwing energy, which is kind of funny because it's throwing the fire, right? He has the word clandestine. And so he kind of sent me data about this in an email after I sent the reveal out. Perhaps there's a cover up something that was done on purpose, an excuse to rebuild. And it was used as an excuse to rebuild. So the fire burnt down the huge sections of Chicago. And then after that, the new Chicago was built. And so, and it was not as pretty as the pre-fire Chicago. And so from Jeff, from his research that he sent me, the fire and the fair are often viewed as symbolic bookends in the story of Chicago's dramatic rebirth and emergence as a world-class city. Because of the technology, the zipper, the electrical escalator, because of some of these technologies that were brought to the fair, Chicago kind of took off. All these investors had come to see the fair, and it took off as a world-class city and a center for maybe more innovation. So I thought really good data from Jeff that maybe gives us a little bit more context for some of John's data, especially the horns and the flames. So, and that connection to something clandestine. John, I also saw in your data the idea of like, oh, it's a secret. And so we're going to see that in other people's data as well. So Cody, you had this idea of something that feels hidden on purpose. Did you want to say a little bit about that? Because it seems relevant here.
Yeah, it come along with that bit about the genie in the lamp. It just felt like something was kind of contained and then let out, like it was either underground or contained, and it come through in a few different ways, like gas or man-made, like a telescoping man-made. I think with my sessions, especially the retasking, I just jumbled everything together and made a story out of it. I couldn't really make sense of it.
And I think that that's just the mark of a good remote viewer, is when you're able to put data and not worry that it doesn't make sense, because the analyst will make sense of it. It's the pure form
hope
of
you had
data.
fun with that one.
And and when I see it now in the context of Jeff's data and of John, your data. So John, here, you're kind of talking about smoke flowing through a wooded area, and negative emotion, ashamed, sad. Do you want to tell us a little bit about this, and especially in terms of the spell casting or performing a ritual? Because I think that that's what points to something maybe a little bit deeper. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if this stuff is related to the same thing or not, but the smoke, yeah, that was just I was trying to get an image of the target, and I just had the kind of visual of kind of smoke just kind of flowing through a wooded area. And the spell casting thing, I don't know what that was. I still don't know what that means, how it's related to the target, but yeah, that came through pretty strong, pretty kind of unique. I don't know. Any ideas what that could mean?
Well, I think that there are some theories that it was a sacrifice, and that a secret society basically burnt down. In the official narrative, oh, nobody died, except that these huge, vast tracts of Chicago burned down, and where elderly people who maybe were not very mobile live, but somehow they didn't die, but they got out even though they can't walk, or they're bedridden, or you know what I mean? Like, the story doesn't quite make sense. It's very sanitized. But the idea that there was technology that was presented at the fair, Tesla had some technology there. There are hints of free energy in your data that you'll see. So the idea that a secret society decided, this is, again, we're still in the early days of the United States, where they're trying to establish who has control over this new country. And so the idea that they're saying, we don't want everyone to have all this tech. We need them to be laborers. We want them to be paying taxes. We want to enrich ourselves at their expense, maybe, or we want to control the masses. And some of this technology, if it gets out, will reduce our control. And so they burn it all down. They burn down all these beautiful structures that inspire and elevate. And in the place of them, they build these small, short, ugly boxes for people to live in and for people to work in. And so there's this destruction of beauty, and the beauty is not rebuilt. The beauty is replaced by garishness and ugliness and this kind of brutalism. And so I think for me, the owl as well, let me show the data. you had this owl related to this, and there's a little owl on the dollar bill, and it's connected to the secret societies. And so I think it's just a fun, playful thought avenue, I guess, to go down and speculate and consider. But I do think that maybe they use this as a sacrifice to increase their own power, while also destroying some of the freedom that would have been given to the people, to the peasants. Claudia, you also, and this ties into this because Claudia, you also had a lot of data about misleading, deception, that kind of hidden thing. So, do you want to talk to us a little bit about the data on this page?
Yes, I also saw a lot of strange things going on. Yeah, and this was, I saw clearly something which was double, which was forked, a tongue. So yeah, as if humanity stole something which is not true. So because I also already read a lot about this fair, and then a lot of people said that indeed Tesla started there with his free energy, and maybe I picked up on that then because it was completely destroyed after that and vanished from history. So
Yes.
false info, yeah.
Yeah.
And I clearly heard it has to be arranged, something maybe because now John was talking about the spell, and I thought maybe this is what they said. We have to do something about it. This cannot be done. So
Yes.
it has to be arranged one way or the
Yeah.
other. That was what I also felt when he talked about the spell. This
Yes.
is, yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
so
I think you had really good data there that kind of fits in with this other data, right? The clandestine,
yeah,
there's something going
yeah.
on. And now for the animals, a little bit of fun, a little bit of lighthearted data. So you can see here this big mammoth, a replica woolly mammoth. There's a giant octopus. So there were all kinds of displays here. I didn't put it in my slides, but they even displayed people from different ethnic groups, and they had them come in from different places in the world, and they had women from 40 countries. So you could pay to see ladies from different from different places in the world. Yeah.
The
And so
road.
I think it was funny. So Jeff picked up on a dog bear like animal, and this idea of like festival and outdoor stuff and lots of noise. And Evan, you did mention earlier you had the rooster in a lot of your data. And I think because you have the rooster holding something, I think if we did more research, we might find some kind of a symbolism that's maybe related. And then John, you had a dinosaur-like thing. So I think that it kind of points to some of the animal sculptures and displays. You can see the bison here on the right-hand side of the screen. So and there are sculptures of other animals as well. And then Evan, you put in this weird data point. Excuse me. And it struck me as really bizarre. And then just by synchronicity, and again, this is that psychic data stream kind of communicates to me as the analyst. Just by synchronicity, I stumbled upon this really weird thing in Celtic culture. And the United States, especially Chicago, it was very largely run by the Irish mob. And there was just a lot of Irish in the United States in those days. And so it makes sense to me that they would have Irish festival traditions going on during this fair. And one of these Irish Celtic traditions is the people who are not invited to a wedding, they make these weird straw coverings for their faces, and they go to the wedding anyway, to celebrate the groom being a decent man, because the groom has to let these guys in, has to give them beer, and they celebrate the bride, they wish her well. And it's just this way for the people who are not friends of the wedding family, especially in smaller villages, right? You don't want to be the only family that doesn't get invited to the wedding because your great grandparents had a fight and you're still supposed to be fighting. And so it was a way to involve everyone into the party. And so I do wonder if maybe there was displays of this or something at the World Fair. And so I thought that was because I did see in other people's data as well, they were picking up on hairy faces. It could be the animals, but when I saw your data here about these masks and this particular image, and then the data stream just gave me this Celtic ritual the next day, I thought, oh yeah, there's something there. And as well, Japan. So we talked about the Ainu, which is a tribe in northern Japan, months ago when we were looking at the UFO that was reported in Japan in the olden days. And the more research I did into the Ainu, the more I found links between Celtic traditions, ancient Celtic and Druid culture, and ancient Ainu Japanese culture. And here's another mysterious link where the Japanese also have straw men. They also come for the new season. They're wishing everyone happiness and good luck. So it's the same. They're bringing to the party the same thing that the Celtic ones do, and their straw gear. In this picture, they have masks, but in some of their representations, they have straw head coverings as well. So I just thought that was a really nice, weird data point that came through. And John, you had it as well as like a hairy kind of person. There's like a layer cover over him. So I thought maybe you guys are picking up on. I suspect they had some kind of a display. Or maybe some kind of an event.
Yeah, that's interesting because when I had that right on that page, this seems to be an outer layer cover, and then I got this visual of this hairy. I thought it was like the target might have been related to Sasquatch, but whether or not like it was actually Sasquatch, so I was like, no, it's a guy in a suit. That's actually what went through my head. I was like, no, it's not a real Sasquatch. It's a guy in a suit.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's really, really good data. And I think it just matches really well, right? So that was really cool. And also, John, so the Midway Plaisance, this is the entertainment area. There's the Ferris wheel, this enormous Ferris wheel. Again, there's some inconsistencies in the story that in 1893, when electricity is just being invented, discovered, shared with the public, they build a Ferris wheel. Each cart carries 36 people, and we're going to see it in Jeff's data coming up. They had these are the ethnic villages that they had, that I think we were just kind of looking at, and the various amusements, musicians, all of this. And so, John, I think, you really picked up on that idea, right? People celebrating, you have the musician, you have these planned events. Oh, not yet. And excuse me, you had this mummy, and I think the white and the stripes, I kind of think that's maybe they had some kind of an Egyptian, well, not maybe, they would have had some kind of an Egyptian pavilion. But I also think it's a nice little data point that kind of describes just the look of the fair itself. And more here about, excuse me, orchestras and instruments, and just you're really picking up on all of that entertainment stuff. So I thought that was really good. And Jeff had the sense of a museum and these objects that are passed down over generations. But he also had this idea of the muse, the inspiration for new designs. So amazing target contact. I thought that was really, really good. And this isn't what he drew, but just an example of the kind of innovations that they were sharing. So here's Edison's phonograph, and here's a woman that's showing people how it works. And so I thought that was really, really cool, 1893. Michael, did you want to talk to us a little bit? So here, the image that I have is, so this was the pavilion of the electricity, and it was all about the new innovations in electricity and what they were able to do with it. Do you want to talk to us a little bit about your data here?
For sure, yeah. Yeah, the notion of like some scientific research being done was like a very heavy theme in my session, and so a lot of the information which came through was about the direction of efforts in engineering and science, for like proof of concept, for prototyping, things like that. Yeah, multiple groups kind of competing with each other to do that. And, I was really, really blown away to kind of see this scene here, which is kind of really what the World Fair is kind of showcasing, the world of tomorrow, some new prototype that's going to be like in every household, like 10 years from now. So on this kind of like very utopian, expo ideas. So
yeah, definitely. Yeah, it would have been amazing. I wish we had things like this today. I mean, they have a World Fair, I think, coming up this year. but I feel like it doesn't have the same feel to it. I think because innovations are shared immediately, so we all kind of know what's going on and what's new, right? But this would have been, I think, really exciting. Here's an example of something strange and odd, and it seems out of time a little bit, but John, tell us about this.
Oh, this was, RB blows my mind, but when it really does is when I'm in a session and I get something that just totally does not make sense, almost to the point where like I almost don't write it down because I'm like, well, clearly that's not, And I just had this view of this like sidewalk with a roller skate on it. I didn't know what it meant, but I was like, I better write it down because I'm sure it probably means something. But yeah, once I was talking to my girlfriend who's read, I guess it was a book about the World's Fair, and she's like, oh yeah, they had moving sidewalks. I was like, oh really? And then I kind of looked at my dad. I was like, okay, I guess that's how my brain's trying to explain that to me, which I thought was really interesting. But yeah, that's really cool once I saw that.
I thought that was really playful.
It's almost frustrating sometimes because you're like, just tell me what the damn thing is, You don't need to make it like cryptic or anything. Just tell me. Just show me the moving sidewalk, but it doesn't work that way, unfortunately.
It is funny. I feel the same. The data stream, it's like you can show me in some sessions or sometimes even in the same session. Like you'll show me something with so much depth and accuracy, and then to the level of an electric escalator. But then instead of showing me the electric escalator, you show me a roller skate on a pavement. So I think, yeah, it's just a weirdness of the the data stream. But it was good data. Also, I found it really interesting because to me, that was quite shocking. Some of the inventions that they had, because you have to think 1893, that's more than a century ago. So how is it that they had these things coming out more than 100 years ago, and we are still here living in boxes? So I don't know. There's something about that. Michael, you have the chassis here. So I think that this fits in a couple different ways. One, the structures, the architecture of the buildings themselves, all these struts, these metal struts. But also, there was a car that was on display, Ford, and so that would have been a big thing as well. So again, it works on different layers. And then here's the electricity at night. And so both Jeff and John, you both picked up on this single point flash burst, bright light. And then the idea of light above is seen by all. So it would have been amazing for all these peasants, these people that are, mostly farmers in this area of the United States. They all come to Chicago to see this World Fair, and they see electricity for the first time. So it would have been, I think, quite amazing and miraculous for them. And Jeff picks up on preparing for nighttime activities and that excitement. And so I think you and Jeff had really nice correspondence, especially these two. Basically, you had the exact same data sketch, the same data pattern, right? That burst of light. So that was really cool to see.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah. And then here's Jeff's data about the Ferris wheel. And Michael, you also had the sense of an elevated platform. You can talk to us about that a little bit. But first, I just want to say, so Jeff sent me this. His description of the Ferris wheel was a 360-degree arch, which is a full circle arch. And he looked into it and found that Ferris, the man who created this Ferris wheel, was 36 years old when he constructed the wheel, and it had 36 cars. So the number 36 coming through again and again. 36 cars. You can see these are enormous. And this on the bottom left-hand side, this is the view of the fair from the Ferris wheel. And I think that Jeff had really interesting data. And there's connections to, I think it's George Ferris and Pennsylvania. And so all the data on his page here actually ends up being really good data. Michael, how did you feel in terms of the elevated platform?
Yeah, this is actually the first non-metaphorical piece of information I found during my conceptual overview work. So it's kind of funny, elevated platform, seeing this in the context of this Ferris wheel and this like very high bird's eye view of like everything. It was like literally like an overview there. So thought it was like pretty funny to kind of see that.
Yeah.
And the elevated platform came up in some other things too, which I think an image is coming a bit later, but between these like two larger tubs or wheels. But I thought that almost that was a bit of a mishmash of like a Ferris wheel that was disassembled and my unconscious kind of reassembled like with the parts in the wrong places a little bit when I like drew it out finally. So
yes, I think so. Yeah. And here, Claudia, again, we could interpret this. There are multiple ways because it's such a broad target. But I do think that this is a really nice sketch match to some of the technology that was being introduced. And Cody, you picked up on the blades and the curves. And so we could match to the Ferris wheel. We could match it to these huge machines that were built and being demonstrated. So just nice kind of little data points. These are these Fresnel lenses for the lighthouses. And Claudia, you had the lighthouse in your map. So I just thought that was a nice little synchronicity there where they were showing off these lighthouse Fresnel lenses. And I put this here with your data, Michael, about textile machines. You were kind of picking up on all of this and that they were doing kind of maybe more complex stuff. You talked about genetic and cellular engineering, and we'll get to that shortly. Jeff picked up on the boats. It was interesting. He had the boats in a couple places. John, you also had this bowl-shaped structure and with life forms in it. And again, you can see these boats compared to the buildings, the humans are so tiny. It gives you a sense of the scale of this event. But they had this electric boat, and that was a big thing. And you can buy a ticket to go on the electric boat. So Jeff picking up on the roar of a jet engine in relation to his boat, I thought that was kind of interesting. And that he's picking up on the idea of the electrical aspects of it. Just really nice data. And then, Michael, you had a whole page of data related to this, but I just kind of put the sketches here. Do you want to talk to us a little bit? Because this is where you're answering the tasking. You're telling us about the people who built it and how they did it.
Certainly, yeah. Yeah, for this, there's just a lot of kind of construction motifs, interlocking, fastening, high energy tool use, and so on. And you mentioned this is one of the novel places electricity was first put into use. In the textile image a bit further back, I think I saw a bit of a connection between the joinery itself, like the V kind of resembles almost like the bird on that Columbia, sort of giving the overview of all that. So I kind of thought that was a bit of a combination between that and maybe a part of a US flag a bit in there too.
Oh,
So,
yes. Yeah, that makes sense. I like that. Yes. You just had an amazing quantity of detail about this, and I think it was all very good. Just for space and for time, I kind of focused it a little bit, and then you had the idea of the schematic, the operational complexity, and Jeff had this idea of there's something special and rare in this place, and it's in this protective space, and that came up in a few people's sessions, and it was a protected space. It was this enclosed area, and there were all these buildings. So if you look on Wikipedia, you'll find there's the administration building, the agricultural building, where there's all kinds of plants and crops and new ways to farm that would be easier. There's the manufacturers and liberal arts building, the mines and mining building, electricity building, the machinery hall, the women's building where they had sewing and the phonograph things, women things. According to the culture of 1893, probably refrigeration of some kind, maybe. The fisheries building, forestry, horticulture, anthropology. So you can see that they covered everything. It was incredible. Here we have Patrick, who is picking up on the clocks, and there were new clocks. The Tiffany came out with a clock. You can see here. Again, remember this is 1893. This is over a century ago, not and a half, but and a third. I was so shocked when I saw these dials on this huge clock that they had that more than a century ago. It looks like something that you would see today. And so Jeff also picked up on this large mechanical clock, keeper of time. And so I think that was a big aspect for people that were being exposed to these amazing new things. Not that clocks are new, but I think in this presentation, this style of it and just the beauty of it all. Patrick did a really good job of picking up on the design, which was the tasking. Tell me about the builders, but also the designers. And so he's picking up on the design of it and just the people that are going through and they're plotting it out and they're creating models before building this. And it's a complex pattern. Which it was enormous. So I think it's really good data. He picks up on the idea of Mandelbrot set fractal, but we can see in some of these images that one in particular, this one here, I can see why you would kind of get data about a Mandelbrot set fractals, right? Because I think that that's how it was built and that's how it was designed, and that's why it's so fascinating. That's one of the reasons I tasked it, because I was curious about that. So good data from Patrick there. And then Michael again. So the idea of achievement is the product of a collective endeavor. Scientists and engineers involved at a facility. I think that's fantastic data for this. And then you're talking about the seeds and you're starting to get into the plants. And again, that's relevant because there's the horticulture building, there's the agriculture building. Jeff had, so there's something interesting here. Jeff had the uh, hot air balloon, with the sense of it having a payload. And we're going to see that word come up again in someone else's data in a strange way. And I just put this here because, John, you had the idea of a necklace or a pendant that has meaning. And I just think your sketch matched this really well. So I don't know if that's what your interpretation of it was, but I think that the data pattern is there in a really playful way. So I think that was kind of interesting. And then everyone's picking up on machinery. Here's the Edison Tower, and we'll see in the next slide the Tesla's display. But the idea of locks and keys, gears, mechanisms, rotation, blades, spinning, everyone was kind of picking up on that. And so that's really good data for what was going on. And Patrick and Jeff had a really nice little coherence here describing this particular metal tool, maybe something to do with like an injection engine of some kind. Yeah, and so just good. And Michael and Jeff, maybe a similar machine that you're describing, and then Cody, you're seeing the blades of it as well. So just really nice data. And then we come to free energy and Tesla. Cody, do you want to tell us a little bit about your design here? Because here in the background, you can see Nikola Tesla's display. You can see he has this ball in the center of this circular platform here. And there's no information about what this was. And so why don't you tell us, Cody, how it felt to you when it came through?
Well, that all come through as like a solar panel. So yeah, that's another one of them sketches where it came through in different ways throughout the session, and I think you could probably match it to a lot of things in the target, but I remember that one definitely come through as a solar panel and the sun hitting it.
Which I think is interesting because that's the idea of it being an energy device that creates energy. And that's interesting because John, you have the bowl with the circle as well, and you have that it's an energy source. How did it come through for you?
Yeah, for me, that was, it came through kind of like Cody said a couple times in kind of different ways, but it was the idea. This one was really unique because it was kind of like this kind of sphere was kind of like swirling or churning. So it was like it was just resting, but it was active. So it was there, but it felt like an energy source that you could tap into it or activate it. Then it would release whatever. And actually, in my other data with like the people trying to decide what to do about it, in my head I was struggling. I called it a light, but I wonder. It almost felt like they were referring to an energy source, something. I don't know. It could have been the fire, but in my head, the subjects were discussing or arguing or trying to figure out what to do with an energy source of some sort. So yeah, no, that was really interesting. I was really really excited once I saw the reveal, because that made sense. And when I saw everyone else's data, I was pretty blown away. It was pretty cool.
I wonder if Nikola Tesla displayed a free energy device at this fair and it got suppressed. I do wonder, just from looking at your data. Michael, you actually called it what it is, a Tesla coil. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, for sure. So this came up in my symbolism phase of my section there. So yeah, I just got this image of this round head, electricity kind of energy waves coming off of it there. But I also kind of just noted as well too, just with the 3 drawing element, it looks like a bit of almost like a person as well, with like really fuzzy hair. I think a fuzzy person was like shown a bit earlier on. And also like a little bit like a bacteriophage virus as well too. Kind of has like this big head with the little legs around
Yeah.
it too. So I think it could like be quite a symbol of a few things, like perhaps like different breakthroughs, information is going viral in some way, spreading from
Yeah.
different people.
Nice.
Another point that came up too is that I also got the image of just a flash of like Jeff in my head as well too while I was doing this part. So I was thinking like, is this because like other people are picking up on this similar like thread in like the session? So that kind of just made me a bit curious to kind of explore that a bit further on. So
Definitely. I think that the free energy aspect of it, we're going to look at Claudia's session in a set or data in a second, where she picks up on the aspect of it being nearly alive, and that fits in, John, with what you just said about this feeling of like it's active, but you kind of have to initiate the energy output. Um, David, did you, I think you're kind of interested in these things, and you have some background in these things to some extent. What did you think about this when you see the data like this?
Well, I can definitely see the correlation. It's quite interesting. I don't really have too much to add other than the amusing thought of whether or not, because you mentioned, Tesla showing free energy off, right? It's like, if that happened, is that what burned down the whole place? Was it actually Tesla's death ray? He's like, oops, I meant to show you the other one. It's just free energy, but kind of accidentally set off the death ray. But no, this is interesting.
Tesla was a bit of a mad inventor, creating kind of earthquakes and as a side effect of his Wardenclyffe Tower, and then just being like, "Oh, oops, sorry," after the fact. So it would be kind of funny if it was Tesla that started the fire.
They just covered it up like, we don't want that guy to be thrown in jail, so
Just blame it on the cow. Patrick picked up on free energy, clean and pure, like electricity, ozone kind of smell, 0 point energy, plasma energy. And he had that same kind of bowl with the maybe magnetism, right? The going in and out and the flow of electricity. And so, again, this is more data that supports this idea. And finally, Claudia, we come to yours because I think you did such a great job of this. And the idea of it being like alive somehow, picking up on that, but then not getting caught up in it and then trying to describe an animal. You really kept it really clean in terms of just describing the data that was coming through. Do you want to tell us a little bit about this?
Yes, because this was, I think, the first page I drew. So I saw the pole and I saw the light emitting, and later on I thought maybe it was in the electricity building, the high thing, what was there, because I clearly saw the compartments in the pole, and there was something like a pattern in it when I saw the photo, but it was very thin material. It was as if it had some life in it.
And it's interesting because with the Tesla coil, you're coiling copper wire, right?
Yeah.
And I remember, I won't name the person, but I remember someone talking to me about experiences with lithium batteries and maybe evidence that suggested that the lithium had some kind of a memory. And there's something about your data here about the Tesla coil, the copper, and that sense of aliveness to it. There's something interesting there. I think a little bit intriguing. And I want to point out, because of David, what you just said about maybe it was Tesla that started the fire, and the story is that the cow kicked over a lantern is the specific term. And here we see Claudia talking about this being like a lantern.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, exactly.
maybe we've discovered that Nikola Tesla burned down the World Fair by accident.
But I also read once then, because you see the photos that there's so much light in the evening, so much light, that they say they can never have done this with electricity things.
Wires.
Because wires, how much wires do you need? Where did it come from?
Yes, it would have cost more than they had to wire up all those lights, and so the idea
Yeah.
is that it would have had to have been some kind of wireless, power generation, which would have been Tesla's, right? So, very interesting. And then
Yeah.
here, Claudia, I put more of your data here, and it's just a continuation of this. I think you did a really good job here of coming through with that data. And Michael, there's that connection there, zero gravity, this idea of like something energetic, and John has it as well. Everything is connected to this. So that's what you just
Mm.
said, Claudia, the idea of like wireless energy transmission. And so everything is connected to this center point of
Yeah.
energy, and that's how it's all lit. And you can see here all the lights on these structures. And remind yourselves, this is 1893.
Yeah. So how many cables do they need, you know? Wow.
Yeah, how much would it have cost them just for the cable?
Yeah.
So new technologies, new machines, new approaches to horticulture, maybe DNA manipulation. I saw that in the data, that DNA manipulation in a lot of people's data. But we could talk about, oh, they're making new humans, new humanity for the reset. But it could also just be that the horticulturists are showing, oh, new crops, new crop yields, new seeds that they've created, new hybrids, things like that. So I don't want to speculate too much, but there's definitely some interesting things. And then the I was talking before we came on air, this pyramid, double pyramid, base to base. Someone online just put out a video today about a Tesla coil built as a base to base pyramid. So if we have time at the end, maybe we'll show that. And then here, so a little bit of information about Tesla and Edison, and they were fighting about who was going to get to power up the lights for the fair. It was a kind of war battle, in the words of Claudia. So really, really nice connection there, Claudia. And then they ended up going with Tesla's alternating current, and then that became the standard system of our modern power grid. So just kind of interesting there. Everyone's kind of picking up, I think, on this wireless energy, maybe, because we have Evan. You had the German Kaiser helmet that's emitting energy. So that idea of like wireless electricity. Do you want to tell us a little bit about how that data came through for you
Yeah,
experientially?
that was a very strong impression. I had thoughts of a large Van de Graaff generator. There's one here at the Museum of Science in Boston that, shoots electricity across the hall, much like that.
Nice. That seems really relevant in light of the rest of the data. What do you think?
Yeah, so it looks like a fit.
Yeah, definitely. And Cody, you had a lot of data about energy being transmitted, but also data being transmitted. And we'll show the facts in a moment. But tell us about it in the context of this information.
Yeah, I think that's one of them ones where it's could mean a few different things, but it come through as like radio waves, communication. And then that sketch down the bottom there, that kind of come through as like looking at a satellite, but after seeing the feedback, it could also be that big spotlight, you know?
That makes sense. Yes, the big spotlight if it was wirelessly powered.
Yeah.
Oh, amazing. Yeah. And that's why it would come through as a laser, because it's this huge spotlight. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, really good data. And then we had the Claudia, your data really helped unlock a lot of this. So really good job. And then, so Cody, you mentioned to me the idea of the primitive fax machine, and I looked into it. Sure enough, here is the telautograph that was displayed at the fair, and it's referred to as like a primitive fax machine. So I think that's an interesting one. But I do think, in relation to the other data, I think the idea of wireless electricity to power all these lights, like Claudia said, just the wiring. We mentioned at the start that this was what, 360 some acres. So just imagine, okay, we're going to put copper wiring through 300 acres of buildings and structures so that we can light them up at night with this new technology that has just been discovered, invented. There's something about that story that's a little bit wonky, I think. So And then here's the horticultural exhibits. There's, all about plants and their greenhouses, and a few of the remote viewers picked up on the greenhouses. Claudia, I think that your trees on top of the building maybe would have been something related to that. And Michael, you drew the greenhouse, so I thought that was really great. There was something here that was interesting. So, um, Jeff talks about this plant-like thing, but it's something that's modeling nature. And there's a clandestine aspect to it. And Evan, you had the exact same flower as Michael drew, but you had the data point of a black dahlia, which has to do with betrayal and sadness. So again, there's this idea of like something dark, something not on the up and up. Did you want to say something about that?
Yeah, there was a thread of espionage or something covert through many elements of my session. This felt like part of it. There's a sense of contamination, and I thought that this was connected to that somehow.
That's interesting. And Michael, you also kind of picked up on similar data. And here's the payload, provenance of the something to contain a payload, a vessel to contain a payload. We saw that in Jeff's data, his air balloon, and it also had kind of negative associations. So do you want to say a little bit about that, Michael? Oh, you're muted.
Yeah. Yeah, so I had a lot of engineering related to like biologics. For me, I think genetic engineering was kind of just like how my mind was kind of interpreting it. But there's like a very broad set with these. For myself, I was also thinking, yeah, I'm not sure like which ways I could probably take that, but yeah, I did connect that sort of like bright objects. With like the smoking diamond, I got like some information about like signaling of some kind
Yeah.
being used. I was also wondering too, like I think it was John, you had this idea of like these trees smoking
Yes.
as well a bit early on, and it actually did actually have a piece I connected to one of the earlier parts of like the sort of the timeline where there was like plants but also like smoke and stuff. So I think there's a kind of a few things kind of speaking through each other quite a bit here around that.
Yes, it seems like it. Yeah, there's a crossings of data. John, you had the idea of the tree of knowledge. So again, I thought that was really interesting data that came through in terms of what we're talking about here, genetic engineering of new plants, maybe new hybrids. So you can see here, Michael, like you were saying, a lot of data about this in particular. Do you want to say anything more from this data?
Yeah, just the emotional tone around it was like quite positive, quite anticipatory, almost kind of excited about this like new thing coming out. That yeah, it was they had a lot of big dreams. I think those people there about reshaping the world and just like
Yes.
built this beautiful city to kind of testify to this kind of future they were envisioning there with all
Yes.
that. And then like you mentioned, the architecture just hasn't really been living up to the promise, and I don't think a lot of the rest of it has really either,
No.
perhaps. So
Yeah.
maybe that's part of there's something kind of there worth kind of looking at.
I think so. And then we move towards this idea of you start picking up on retroviruses, you start picking up on maybe illness, infections, but in terms of curing them and coming up with medicine. So I thought that was kind of interesting because that would have probably been part of it as well, right? Jeff also picked up on this idea of medicine in relation to his air balloon with the payload, a complex payload. So again, it might be something with seeds, right? Seeds that are grown in a different way, and the payload of the seed is some kind of a new medicine. Did you want to say something about this a little bit, Michael?
Yeah, so a lot of this came up during the sort of conceptual overview portion I was doing, and yeah, there's a lot of very like these were quite early on in my session. There's kind of very large kind of gestalt still trying to like unpack slowly through my brain. I think the longer my sessions go on, like multi-days, usually it's a bit more streamlined, kind of where the pieces fit in. The DNA editing thing actually came from sort of a future projection in some way, like related to future developments in say horticulture, which was a big theme in my own session, perhaps around like gene editing and genetic engineering and so on. Yeah. It's also another image related to like space elevators, which I think just could have been, related to the elevated viewing again. Perhaps it's like projecting like other future world fairs in other areas or other parts of the world at some leader points too.
Also, I think I don't know if you could uncover this information because it's probably well hidden. But to me, it looks like you have GZS or G25SE or something in your VATs. And because I know I've seen enough of automatic writing and remote viewing, especially from this group and from myself as well, I suspect that that's happening here. And so you might find something looking through that.
Yeah, thank you.
Mhm. And then Claudia.
I want to say one more thing on that
Oh,
on that page. I just noticed this, but and I don't know what it means, but I did have a perception somewhere. I think it was on a different. I don't remember what session it was, but about something is like thick. It reminds me of grape jelly or something. And I saw your sludge green and purple. And when I saw the sludge and purple, that's what I was seeing. I don't know what it meant, but I saw that.
Yes, you had the grape sludge with the person that was wearing a kind of a suit.
Yeah.
And that's the link to this as well. Yes, because for Michael, it came through the hazmat suit. I connected it to the straw man suits, but there's definitely something weird going on there. Definitely, yeah, a relationship. And Claudia, you had the contents don't feel safe, so you're kind of mirroring some of the caution that Michael is expressing here. Do you want to tell us a little bit? And you also have the silver metal containers and the glass jar. So there's a parallel here between what Michael is describing and what you're describing. Do you want to talk to us a bit about this?
Yeah, I had clearly the idea that there was something saved, the seeds, and that it was stored and driven away to a safe place. So when first I thought it's dangerous, but later on I picked on you have these barrels where you have these DNA things and semen of men, and then when you open it, it's all these frozen air come out. That's what I saw. Yeah, so deep frozen, and this steam. So I clearly felt that it was very important that this was conserved somewhere. So maybe from the agricultural area that they saved special seeds.
Yeah, and also even for the animals, so different breeds of cows, new breeds of cows, maybe, selling semen of, whatever big cows that were useful.
Because it was human, animal, and plant life.
Yeah. And I think, people talk about the reset happening around this time as well. And so for them, if you look at the orphan trains and you look at the baby incubators at the World Fairs, they might see something hinted at here in your data. So this is why I did want to show it. I don't have enough data to make a case for that interpretation, but I think it touches on it. And to me, that was really interesting. And then what happened to the people that built this and were able to design this, and then seemingly after the fair, all they could do was design ugly little boxes for us to live in and work in. And so that's why I was curious. And that's why I put in my tasking, in my subtask, what happened to these people? And you came through with these doctors with the plague masks and a sense of illness. I do wonder if maybe at the World Fair was there contamination that was maybe spread? Did something happen that maybe we don't learn about in history? Because I do think that there is enough data that kind of seems to point to that. And the idea of it being intentional, the idea of it being planted, arranged, seeded, done on purpose.
Spanish flu is later, right? This is earlier, but do you think that there was some activity associated with that here? Like development or, something goofy like that?
Well, I thought about that because I also wondered why I did keep on seeing these black hats, like the pest, and the Spanish flu is then known around 1910, something like that.
Yeah.
So it's maybe 20 years later. Am I right? Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think the guys or the men who built the whole fair were not so old, probably in the 20s, 30s. So if they died then in that time frame, it
Yes,
could
the
be.
data would come
Yeah.
through. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or even like pharmaceutical companies, like the people that created those, or were they participating in the fair? Were they funding it? That kind of thing.
Oh, yeah, they were funding it, I think. Yeah, if I read it right.
Yeah, I agree,
Yeah.
David. I think that what we're seeing today with big pharma, with Pfizer, Moderna, the COVID oh no, I just said the bad word on YouTube. Oh, okay, the video might get censored for that. Anyway, moving on. But I
No,
do
I did
think
not hear anything.
we
Ah,
have seen that like some of these pharmaceutical companies now seem to be working hand in hand with things that end up getting out of the lab and infecting people and causing illness that they then happily have cures for or have treatments for, right?
yeah.
And so the idea that maybe they were working on viruses at this lab, that the researchers came together at this event and worked together after this, and then somehow out of this came the Spanish flu. I think that that's not out of the realm of possibility, because if you look at the Spanish flu, it did originate in the places where the soldiers who were vaccinated against any new disease, wherever they went, that's where the Spanish flu spread from.
Just out of curiosity, I don't know anything about it, but I'm assuming that the Spanish flu has no linkage to birds, because like bird flu, because you look at that image there. Just speculation, that's all.
Yeah, no, it was they vaccinated a whole bunch of U.S. soldiers and then sent them off to Europe during the First World War, and everywhere those vaccinated soldiers went, the Spanish flu broke out.
Yes, yeah. It started in the US, I think, if I've
Yes,
read
it
it
did.
right. Yeah, not in Spain. So,
Yeah.
but it was odd because the humans I saw, on the and were all kind of ghost and images. They flew, so they were not alive around on the wall and on the ceiling. It's a very dark image, and I didn't want to go there, but it came back again and again.
One thing on this visual, when I saw this slide, that I didn't understand what that face, that little beaked face mask is, but when I was looking back through my data on my second session in my matrix, I have a sketch that looks like that. And I say like chicken, but my drawing doesn't look like a chicken. It looks like this dude with the hat. I mean, so when I saw this, I was like, oh my God, that looks. So I don't know if that really does mean anything, but that's really interesting.
And the rooster came through in Evan as well, in Evan's data as well.
Yeah, I think the bird with long beak is like the ibis, which I think maybe it can be traced back to like kind of like Thoth, who's like has that Egyptian bird god, which is like for like medicine and things. So.
And also the plague doctors, they wore these. So what they would do is they would put a concoction of herbs and like menthol and just things that smell nice, and they would put them in the beak so that kind of to protect themselves from inhaling the virus, right? And then they would protect their eyes so that they wouldn't touch their eyes, so that they wouldn't get contaminated by the plague. And they wore gloves. And so that's why they wore those kind of bird masks, essentially, when they were treating patients. But that's the story we're told again. But Michael, I think that you're hitting on something deeper there with maybe that's the cover story, but underneath that, I think that it was this idea of magic and channeling, some of the ancient Egyptian gods for power against illness. And so we had wildflowers. We had very, very similar sketches. The mimosa, branch of mimosa that Claudia drew, and Michael, your wildflowers. And so just really nice data here. And some connections a little bit, Claudia, with your spiky balls in relation to the plants, the medicines. and Michael, your retroviruses in relation to the medicines in relation or to treat them. So just really nice little correspondences there. And here's a better sketch where I think there's a really nice similarity. And again, Claudia, your automatic writing, again, I see this as the plant, which is maybe the treatment for illness, but also the flowers being representations of the virus, like we see with Michael here. So I just thought that was an interesting little link there. Really nice data. And it does, you know, here we have Evan, soap cleanser, contamination. So everyone's kind of picking up on this idea of illness and spread and virus, and I think on purpose. Here's just a little bit of fun data from Jeff. You know, it kind of makes me think of oh my goodness, Dorothy, the Wizard of Oz, going up into the tornado and then being brought into the Emerald City. So again, there's something there that I think is kind of interesting. Just in terms of the beauty. And so here, the Pledge of Allegiance was first performed at the exposition by a mass of school children lined up in military fashion, according to Wikipedia. And John, you picked up on the US flag, and you had it and Michael, you were mentioning in your construction pictures, and you had the square and maybe something like the flag kind of representing that, the work of the within the United States or for the United States, and something about honoring the country. So I think that was just a nice little data point there that I wanted to bring up. And Michael, you had awesome. Oh yeah, go ahead.
Well, that's pretty cool. That's a good hit.
Yeah, I thought so too. It was pretty amazing. The level of target contact you guys had was spectacular. The level of detail that you brought forth was just incredible. The shield, the crossbones, the secret society, and the owl from John in relation to the fire. So I think that there's hints of these other stories. There's hints of these other maybe conspiracy theories, if you want, or alternative histories, Tartaria kind of theories. I think some of the data hinted to it, but not enough that I could piece something together persuasively. And then here, everyone's talking about something, energy from below. Does anybody want to talk to us a little bit about what they felt here?
I can talk about that rocket ship looking thing. I wasn't sure what that was. I got the sense of something being distributed from up in the air, and I think that might tie over to maybe John's thoughts about a payload from the balloon.
So what I think that the rocket imagery, so you can see here, everyone is telling me about rockets. Michael, you drew a rocket and mentioning a correlation to Jeff's work. And then Jeff had jet engine, and he saw the rocket in different ways, incoming energy from above and something burning up as it comes into the atmosphere. Evan, you drew the rocket in a couple places in your data. Cody, you also had objects that are coming, falling, and this kind of thing. And I think that that's because the statue is the Columbia statue. It's the statue of the goddess Columbia from Greek myth. And NASA's space shuttle Columbia was based on the same figure. And I suspect that you guys were picking up on that link, because in our current day, when you think of the goddess Columbia, excuse me, you're going to link it to NASA because they attached their rocket to her as well in a kind of maybe magical way to like bring forth good luck and success. And so I think that's why. What do you guys think about that possibility? Michael, you had the rocket drawn out. Or
yeah,
David, go ahead.
I see the correlations you're laying out. It's pretty interesting.
Because otherwise it's kind of strange that everyone's giving me rocket ships in relation to the Chicago World Fair. But when you see that the main statue is Columbia and you see the link with the space shuttle Columbia, I think that works as an interpretation of the data. Yeah. Anybody had input there, Michael?
Yeah, I this portion of my session was on the shallower side. This was more for like looking for correlations of correct data in other people's sessions. So yeah, the thing I picked up on a rock was the rocket, which had a lot of connections with other people's data there. So I think there is definitely something in like Jeff Evans and Cody's data, which could probably be worth exploring a bit more.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting link. So I just thought, and because I think the focus was a lot on the Columbia statue, because that's what people recognize as being emblematic of the fair. And in a lot of the promotions, they used it. And even if you look it up online now, that's the main picture that you'll find. So, but the energy coming from underneath that, I'm not really quite sure, but everyone did kind of pick up on this. And then
Maybe,
Claudia, oh yeah,
sorry, maybe one thing, a quick idea I had was around the tornado that was a bit earlier. Maybe that's also kind of related to, yeah, turbulence, clashes like that. And then there was like, I think it was the Columbia shuttle that did like blow up eventually. Was that?
the Challenger,
Sorry, yeah, I think I'm confusing things there, but
I think I mean, it's a good point, right? That once people are kind of locked on to NASA rockets, then the Challenger data is going to come through just because it's so shiny. Yeah, I think that's a good point.
Yeah. Oh, can I say something about everything what was under the sand?
Yes.
Because I once have seen a documentary, and then they did a test to see how the energy of Tesla worked. And then they put 2 poles in the ground, and then the energy went through the ground. So it was really amazing how this worked. So maybe it has to do with that, with the
You're
energy.
so right. Claudia, you're so right. What an insight. Yes, that's correct. We always think about energy propagation through the air, through, radio
Yeah.
waves, but you're right that it's also transmitted through the ground, and that is one of the ways that Tesla was testing, was through the ground propagation of energy. Very interesting.
And it's also done today, with regular electricity. There's a
didn't know
feedback
that.
loop. With the lines overhead, and it goes to ground, right? But there's actually like sort of a feedback loop effect because the Earth is involved in that process.
Oh, interesting. That makes sense, right? And so very, very nice insight. Thank you, Claudia. That kind of helps make sense of this data, because everyone, kind of was picking up on something about this energy under the ground. So yeah, that makes
Yeah,
sense.
and I interpreted like worms or something like that, but I think it was all kind of energy sparks,
Yeah, current,
Yeah,
definitely.
current, yeah.
Yeah, very nice. And then, Claudia, you gave us really hopeful transformation, new society, and that fits in really well with Michael's. And for you, Claudia, came through as like metamorphosis of the butterfly. But I think it did come out in other people's data as well. This idea of like the new hope, the new city, and like Michael was talking about earlier, I think that they really did think, here's a demonstration of the new world we're going to make together here in this land, in America. We're going to build this new world, and it's going to be beautiful, and it's going to be technological, and it's going to be advanced. And we're going to have, all these advanced crops, and seeds and hybrids, and we'll have all these
Architecture,
machines,
yeah.
architecture, beautiful architecture, electricity, and then nothing. And then it all burns down, and then we go back to same old life as usual, which is hard and a lot of work. So the promise that the fair held, really, really nice. And then you had really good words here, related to this resurrection between two worlds, the shadow world of ghosts, and then maybe the promised world, that transformation. So I just think you had that really nice meaning underlying your data. So I like to see that. And then, John, I felt so bad because you were experiencing a lot of loud noise, and I found an article talking about the deafening noise in the electrical building.
I'm glad you found that, because I was like, what in the hell, man? A couple times just like, geez, like, yeah, that was pretty interesting. I was wondering what that was. That makes a lot of sense.
I felt bad for you because I saw it in all these different places in your session where you're like, this is too loud.
Yeah, it sure was.
And I think it's always fun when you're remote viewing and you get into that kind of state where you're so deep in that you're experiencing the data to that severity, that extent, where you're like, ouch.
Yeah, that's not the kind of noise that I usually think about in remote viewing, but sure was loud.
Yeah, I thought that was hilarious. And so then we had some data here from Jeff about a person, but he's not here to talk to us more about it. But even just the calcification of bones, we saw it in Michael's data as well. That idea of like calcium toothpaste, the white, the gypsum that they use for these buildings. So I think there's a little bit about there. And then we're nearly at the end. So Claudia, tell us a little bit about the person that you described, because I think you did some nice research on this. Oh, you're muted, Claudia.
Well, first I thought maybe this is Tesla, because after the reveal, I thought, hey, the energy. And but then when scrolling further, I also saw the mayor of Chicago at that time. He was murdered, I read, just before the end of the fair. So probably there was a lot of things going on there of who is right and wrong. But he had a lot of facial hair and
Oh,
yeah, beard, and because there was another photo where he had a lot of hair here at the sides of his face and dressed in in these old-fashioned clothes.
yes, you have the era close enough. Yeah.
Yeah. So
And
well,
even just the idea of inventions, discoveries, medicine, penicillin, I think it's just good data. It's related, right? So yeah, I
yeah.
thought that was good. And then Michael, tell us about the man that you saw in the context of the feedback.
Yeah, so I think this is likely one of the inventors that was at the fair working there, or like perhaps an investor in one of them too. So kind of came to me was like Clark Kent look like with executive characteristics. So kind of really devoted to his work, not entirely like super with family, believes a lot in what he's kind of doing. Admittedly, also like very much wants like the American dream that's going on there. Opportunities through respect to the target include fruitful collaborations in his domain of expertise, can define his career and life if there's success there. Got the aphorism, good things come to those who wait. When I probed for that, it mentioned a progression of phases of realization in terms of producing, uncovering, or learning. So
Yeah.
I think it's kind of relating to like continuous iterative improvements in technology and the prototyping and stuff.
Yes.
For threats to this, I got complex legal and political framework, competing firms can vector investments away, and smaller fish than he thinks. So
Interesting.
it could be like perhaps related to some of the more novel inventions. There could be more entrenched like economic or political interests that may be favoring certain developments of some technology in some directions over others, which may be kind of compromising some of
Yes.
the more free investigations which go on. Again, same thing with vectoring investments, like, that can be a very feckless aspect of owning a business. And yeah, I think, maybe he wasn't as like brilliant or world revolutionizing as he kind of thought he was. So
I mean, it would have been hard for people who have been building something in their own little lab or their own little garage or shed, and then they go to this event and then they see what everybody else has been working on.
yeah.
And I think the idea of patience that came through in John's session as well, that idea of like, wait for it, right? And so the development of prototypes, the secrecy you want to share and display, but at the same time, you don't want people stealing your ideas if you haven't patented them yet. So I think it's just really interesting. And then, Claudia, you did the past, now, and the future, maybe in relation to free energy, you were thinking after the feedback?
Yes, yeah, I think indeed that it could be with regard to the free energy, because I think many casualties in the past. I think what David said with the death ray, something went wrong, and well, electricity, it works, and then maybe we get something better. Even it should be, yeah.
It's hopeful.
Yeah.
New discoveries will be made and improved. And I know Ashton Forbes is talking a lot about free energy right now, and he's talking to physicists. He's forcing that topic open, and he's forcing it onto the public in a really good way. And so I think these things are starting to come out. So really good. And Cody, you talked about the genie's lamp earlier. And I thought it was hilarious that Michael, you drew the oil lamp in your connection. Cody, you had this idea of like hiding or protecting. Do you want to talk a little bit about this as we're wrapping up here?
Yeah, it just felt like there was something in it. I didn't really explore it, but after the feedback, didn't the cow kicking over a lamp, was it? What you said that started the fire?
Yes, that's the official
It could be
narrative.
just that.
Well, but I think that the idea of a genie's lamp, right? The inventor, the magic, the three wishes. You rub the lamp, you get your wishes, and magic happens. But I also think something along the lines of subterfuge, um, hidden agendas, is definitely come through in multiple people's data. So and so that's what this was. This was the Chicago World Fair. You guys had fantastic data, really interesting data. There are a lot of things, especially in the beginning, where we looked at your target contact with the buildings themselves. I think that that was really fascinating. It was interesting to do analysis because I had no idea some of the inventions that were already present in society more than 100 years ago. That was a little bit heartbreaking to see that we haven't advanced, I think, as much as I would like to see us advance. This Tesla's display, Nikola Tesla is the type that would put a free energy device right there in the center of his table at some kind of an event like this. He was battling with Edison, battling with Westinghouse. So I do find it very curious. As a project, I would probably want to know more about what is this device? How does it work? John, your data I felt intrigued me the most, I think, in terms of this idea of something resting in here and it's an energy source. I think you made really good contact with this particular item of Tesla's. So yeah, I think that's worthy of more remote viewing work being done on it. Everyone provided amazing data. You all found your niche of interest. And I think it's just the quality of the target contact was excellent. And you told the story of what was going on. You covered every aspect of it. You brought back new data. You brought us new insights to kind of propel our future research into this. Just really spectacular. I think you all did an amazing job. And so, what do you guys think in closing about your data on this target, about the target itself, about how it felt? Anyone can jump in.
Yeah, I think it was a fun
Felt-
target.
There you go.
Seems like there's a lot of different like threads people kind of pull on, but eventually you kind of get the rest of the sweater afterwards if you just like continue to stick with it and dig deep enough. So
Yeah, it felt pretty scattered for me, to be honest, but it is what it is. But everyone did a great job.
Yeah, same. I mean, I feel like mine's always scattered kind of all over the place, but it's always better when I see everyone else's data and kind of what connects with what. And yeah, very, very, very interesting target, which now I think I have more questions than answers.
It was very broad for the tasking. And so normally I do try to close it in a little bit more narrowly for you. So for this one, I kind of gave it more of a free for all aspect. So in a way, I think it's nice that you picked up on that. It's a little bit harder as a remote viewer when the tasking is too broad because like you can see in some people's sessions, it's like, okay, you're getting a little bit of everything. You're getting the musicians, you're getting the culture, you're getting the secrets, the fire, but I think for this, I think it was fun, and I think it was okay. I think it worked out well. Claudia, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, well, the same. It was scattered, and I already mentioned that I found it a pity that I did not pick up on the buildings because they are beautiful, and and then I picked more up on the side of the what happened to the people and the demolition and yeah, but I found it amazing how we have the same things and yeah. I also checked with Patrick already. We WhatsApped and then we went over it, and then we found also a lot of things we had the same. So it gave already some confidence that we were in the right direction. Yeah, it's nice. Yeah.
Very nice. And Evan, what did you think? This was your first time participating in the group. What are
It was
your
great.
thoughts?
Yeah, I think despite the breadth of the target, there was a lot of corroboration that was really fun to review.
And you had great data, so thank you for participating.
Thank you.
Hopefully you'll come back next month
I'll
because
be around. Yeah.
you got great data. You did a really good job. And it's always just fun to have new people in and to see the new resonances uh, amongst the viewers. And you had really strong connections with a lot of the other viewers, actually, right? So that was kind of really nice to see. Yeah, it was really nice. David, usually you get to see the data beforehand. This time I held it back. So this is your first view of the data. What did you think?
Yeah, it was amazing to see like everything everybody said, right? The correlation between viewers. It's just the typical thing that we see within these meetings, which, you know, I say this every time, but it's like, David, just keep repeating yourself every like meeting. It's like, yeah, but I can't help it because it's true. It's like, you know, it's a miracle to be able to pull information psychically to the level that you can correlate through analysis with the target, right? It's another level of miracle to see corroboration between individual people. It's like another level of insanity. It's like, well, I got level 1 and insane, and then so on, stacking it, right? So yeah, I mean, it's fascinating to see the connections to the devices made at the fair, the architecture, the concepts that they were dealing with at the time, to possibly uncover some elements that are hidden, like maybe the actual real source of the fire, or the idea that maybe there was something to do with a pandemic or pharmaceuticals or viruses, that some kind of activity associated with that isn't generally talked about and is completely hidden, which may be something that could be like fully decoded through remote viewing if enough work was put into it to understand what that means. And it's unlikely that that's noise, right? Based on what I've seen with remote viewing over the years, it's pretty improbable that that's the case. That's probably something very real. So, yeah, I mean, all those things go through my mind. And then it's always great to see the visuals, because the visuals, you know, like with Michael's, whether it's true or not, if I see 3 levels of information in that visual, like the negative space, the overlapping components, right? These kinds of things, it's still very interesting to me. And the written stuff is great too. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just the visuals have, a lot of times I feel, have more of an impact, or they're easier for me to kind of quickly kind of decode the strength of somebody's relevance to particular elements in the target, right? So I love seeing all the visuals that everybody produces, and yeah, it's really good.
Thank you, David. I think, yeah, everyone did such a good job. And what I notice, you guys don't have very much noise at all in your sessions, if any, you know, and I think, again, that's part of your skill level, the group coherence, but also I think the analysis is part of that as well. Um,
Right. Yeah.
Figuring out that some things that maybe in the past you'd have been like, oh, that's noise. And then you realize, oh, no, it's just that it was misunderstood. Right? Or you have to do the research to figure it out. The thing, energy from underground, and then David and Claudia come up with, oh, this is how energy is propagated underground, and we, you know, Tesla was experimenting with this, and we do this today. It's a feedback loop. These are things that this is good data. The rocket ship, you might have thought, oh, I have a weird rocket ship noise in my session. No, you're talking about Columbia, which is the name of the statue. That was this huge, enormous statue at one end that everyone would have just been in awe of.
Yeah.
Go ahead, David.
Yeah, no, I agree with all that. And that's one of the things I've said to you frequently, is that remote viewing without analysis is worthless, because I remember as a beginner, intermediate, or even advanced viewer back in the 90s and 2000s when I was doing this, I didn't have anybody. Nobody talks about analysis, man. Like the whole community, they don't fucking, it's annoying. It's just annoying. So it's like, it should, from 30 or 40 years ago, however long, it's like, that needs to be like a major part of the whole process of like, we're going to teach you analysis, we're going to show you examples, right? It doesn't exist. It doesn't exist going back in that time frame and for decades. So it's like, I would get my remote viewing results just like you guys would, right? I'm a beginner. I'm like, oh, did I hit the target, right? And I'm looking at it, I'm like, it's a bunch of garbage, right? But it's like, there was with more intelligence and more examples and like your level of analysis, I can actually go back as a more experienced, mature individual and look at those old sessions and see that I actually did hit the target, but then I didn't know that in that time frame, right? So then it's like I could have just been like, nah, remote viewing is garbage, and just like walked out the door, right? And I've accomplished so much more since then if by sticking with it, right? So this is a real horrible thing, in my opinion, for the community, where they're at currently and where they've been. It's like, my God, let's move forward, guys, because we could have like solutions already in the data that people have run targets on over the past 30 years, and it's not even being talked about because nobody sees it, right? It's annoying. So yeah, I agree with you 100%. It's such a major deal. This is why I feel that this is really important, because it showcases the different ways that analysis should be thought about. Like the research part is important. That's a separate kind of piece, but it's like real critical, because you without a lexicon, you have a lexicon for remote viewing, which limits how much data you pull and what it looks like. But you also have a lexicon for analysis, right? So it's like, if the two lexicons don't line up, then you still miss out on data that's there. So yeah, this is all important stuff, but.
Well, and in addition to the full spectrum illumination remote viewing training, I've been thinking about, can I teach full spectrum analysis? I do want to produce a book about the system that I use. The teachability of it, I think, because I incorporate synchronicities, right? And I incorporate my access to the data stream. I think some of it is teachable, and then some of it is going to rely on your own ability and skill, your dialoguing with the data stream, your ability to notice synchronicities, your ability to generate synchronicities. And so it is something that I am looking towards teaching, hopefully this year. Because I agree. I think that we need to be aware of it. We need to talk about it more. And you can see it here today. I think it helps unlock a lot of data. Claudia?
Yeah, it's very interesting what you're saying, but I think it also has to do with knowledge, because you started to talk about this hat, this for the liberty. I never heard about it. Okay, I've seen it, but I did not know with the connection with France. So I thought, oh, very interesting. But you often in your analysis, you add something which is completely new to me. So it also needs knowledge. Yeah.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Claudia. And that's the hard part of teaching it. That's one of the things I struggle with, because part of it is, I'm a bit of a dilettante. I have a lot of interests, and I've done a little bit of looking into all these different topics. And even, in university, I studied a lot of different little courses. And so I think that helps me a lot in analysis, because I maybe have a bigger breadth of familiarity with weird concepts. Also, I don't sleep well, so I spend a lot of time researching weird ideas. But through that, I'm exposed to a lot of ideas, and so but what I'm realizing, the teachable aspect of that is, okay, you might not necessarily have been exposed to all these as much information, but if you have that curiosity, that I think is more important. Do you have the curiosity to say, why do I have a rocket in the middle of my session about the World Fair? And then go research it, right? The idea of this hat, this seems important. And so even if you weren't familiar with the Phrygians and all of that, Midas and all of that, because there's a lot of connections there that I didn't have time to talk about today. But even if you don't have that, if you have the curiosity to say, that's a weird data point, why is that in this session? And then go try to find the connection. And that is teachable. So yeah, I'm excited to see what we can do with that in terms of moving the community towards trying to do that at a higher level of skill. Michael, you brought up this idea of like working in groups helps for this kind of a broad target where you get all kinds of really interesting data in all these different avenues of the target. Do you want to say a little bit about that?
Yeah, I just think it's cool to see what types of elements were kind of shiniest to a lot of different people. Like focusing on like the agricultural stuff, the inventions, the architecture, some of the different cultural things, maybe stuff going on behind the scenes, or like broader like historical context for this and that. Like that's kind of what I was pointing to, and in that comment I quite liked kind of seeing that. It kind of helps, I think, other feature analysis going forward as well too, because you kind of know what people kind of really like looking at in a target. So
it makes it really nice if you're putting together an operational group to be able to know, like, okay, if I want this kind of data, I know that Claudia tends to be really interested in that. So she's most likely to go and gather data about that. And Michael really likes this kind of data, and he tends to bring me back a lot of detail about this kind of data. So if that's my target. So definitely for operational groups, it helps to have experience with a group of remote viewers and kind of know them and their strengths. And doing a broad target like this, you're right, it helps to show that. As the tasker and the analyst, for me, that was, I think, maybe the most instructive part of this whole target, was exactly what you're saying. Is trying to see, when I give you guys free reign, when I just say, here's this huge event and there's a whole bunch of stuff going on, tell me what's interesting to you. It gives me a sense of what that is, right? And so, yeah, definitely. And then just saying hello to the people in chat. Sweets, thank you for being here. Harbinger, talking about moving timelines. Yeah, I think that there's a lot there. And again, the data didn't support enough so that we can't really talk about too much speculation, but I agree with kind of what you're hinting at. And the idea of decoding remote viewing symbols. Barney grumbles, hates my voice. I do too, Barney. I know my voice is annoying. I hate it as much as you do. If you want to donate so that I can get some kind of a speech voice coach that works with celebrities in Hollywood, because I don't want to pay someone who just pretends that they can help me but can't. But if you're willing to pay for some Hollywood voice coach that works with like A-list actors to help me get a better voice, I'm 100% on board. You pay for it, I'll arrange it, I'll take the course, I'll have a better voice, because I agree, my voice is weird and annoying. And then Hulking Colossus, thank you for being here and participating. And Laura, if you want to join the group, if you want to participate, it's an open group. I put the targets out on our Facebook. I put them on our Patreon, Magic in the Noise. And so you can find it in different places and submit your session. I put them out usually a week after the last live stream. I'll put out the new target for next month's target. And I invite anyone who has strong enough target contact whose session is in English, legible, make sure that I can read what your writing says. And if you follow those kind of respectful rules for the analyst, then, and you have good target contact, then like we did with Evan today, Evan submitted a session, great work, neat, legible. I could see what he was kind of saying. And so here he is today. So, and then with that, if no one else has anything else to say, I just want to thank everyone for participating. You did great work as always. It was just fun. It was a great date. It was a different type of target, a little bit more challenging because of the breadth, but I think you really met the challenge. So, and in the audience, if you guys have your own interpretations, if you saw something in the data that maybe we missed, if you have insights, please leave them in the comments down below. That's always interesting, and we'll be reading them. So do feel free to do that. Our next live stream, like I said, I'll probably put the target out sometime next week on our Patreon, Magic in the Noise, our Facebook, maybe Magic and Noise. But the Patreon's probably the easiest because it's the more reliable one. And then sometimes I post them on Twitter, but sometimes I forget. And so with that, thank you everyone for being here. I appreciate your time.
Okay, thank you for the
thanks
energy.
everybody.
Thank you.
Thank
That was
you.
fun.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
Till next time.
Bye.